The humiliation, the crystal chandelier, above cast dancing shadows across the white linen tablecloths. Rebecca Hart smoothed her navy dress for the 100th time, her eyes drifting to the empty seat beside her. Table 12 felt like an island of failure in a sea of coupled happiness. Her sister Melissa's wedding was everything she had dreamed of, elegant, romantic, and painfully perfect. Everything except Rebecca's own situation. 3 days ago, Trevor had sent a text. Not even a phone call. Just cold digital words explaining that he needed space, that attending a family wedding felt too serious, too committed. The translation was clear enough. He had found someone else, someone who did not require explanations or apologies. Rebecca, darling, where is your date? Her Aunt Patricia descended upon the table like a perfumed storm, her eyes gleaming with barely concealed curiosity. Did something happen? He had a work emergency. Rebecca lied smoothly, hating how easily the words came. She had practiced this excuse in the mirror that morning, trying to make it sound convincing. Patricia's expression shifted to practiced sympathy, which somehow felt worse than outright pity. Oh, how unfortunate. You know, my neighbor's son just moved back to town. He's a dentist. Very successful. I could introduce you. Before Rebecca could politely decline, her aunt had already moved on to spread the news to other relatives. Rebecca could almost hear the whispers starting, see the sideways glances. Poor Rebecca, 27 and still single. Could not even keep a date for her own sister's wedding. She reached for her champagne glass, the bubbles suddenly tasting bitter on her tongue. The string quartet began playing a love song that had been popular during her college years. When life had seemed full of endless possibilities, now those possibilities felt like they were narrowing with each passing year. That seat should not be empty. The voice came from behind her, deep and textured like aged whiskey. Rebecca turned, expecting another well-meaning relative or family friend. Instead, she found herself looking up at a man who seemed to belong in a different world entirely. The stranger, he was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair styled with precise care. His suit was clearly custom-made, the kind of tailoring that cost more than her monthly rent. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. Dark brown, almost black, and far too observant. They seemed to catalog every detail about her in seconds. Her nervous fidgeting, the slight redness around her eyes from earlier tears, the defiant tilt of her chin. 2 men stood several feet behind him, dressed in similar dark suits. Their eyes constantly scanned the ballroom, hands positioned in ways that suggested they were armed. Security, Rebecca realized. But why would someone need armed security at a wedding? I'm sorry? She managed, suddenly very aware that she was staring. The empty chair, he said, gesturing to the vacant seat beside her. It makes you vulnerable to unwanted attention and pity. Both are unacceptable. His directness caught her off guard. Most people danced around the obvious awkwardness. He simply stated it as fact. I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine, Rebecca said, trying to inject confidence into her voice. I prefer having the extra space. A slight smile curved his lips, suggesting he saw right through her lie. Of course you do. Without asking permission, he pulled out the empty chair and sat down. I'm Dominic. The casual way he invaded her space should have annoyed her. Instead, Rebecca found herself intrigued by his absolute confidence. Rebecca, and you are here because... Your sister's husband has business connections to my family, Dominic replied, accepting a glass of champagne from a waiter who appeared almost instantly. I thought it appropriate to attend. Rebecca glanced toward the head table where Melissa sat with her new husband, Bradley. He worked in commercial real estate, she knew, but the specifics of his business dealings had always seemed deliberately vague when discussed at family dinners. Business connections, Rebecca repeated slowly. What kind of business are you in? Import and export, primarily, Dominic said smoothly. Real estate investments. Various enterprises. The vague answer told her nothing and everything at once. She had lived in the city long enough to recognize when someone was carefully avoiding specifics about their profession before she could press further. Her Aunt Patricia reappeared, her eyes widening as she took in Dominic's presence at the table. Rebecca, You didn't mention you had someone joining you after all, she exclaimed, her earlier pity transforming into delighted surprise. Dominic stood with old-fashioned courtesy. Taking Patricia's hand, "The fault is mine entirely. I was delayed by business and asked Rebecca not to mention I might be late. I didn't want to make promises I might not be able to keep." The lie rolled off his tongue with practiced ease. Patricia practically glowed with relief that her niece was not a complete social disaster after all. "How wonderful. And how did you two meet?" she pressed, settling into interrogation mode. Rebecca opened her mouth, but Dominic spoke first. "At the art museum where Rebecca works. I was admiring the Renaissance collection, and she offered insights that even the audio guide couldn't provide." He glanced at Rebecca with convincing warmth. "Her passion for art history is captivating. The arrangement was perfect, specific enough to sound genuine, flattering enough to satisfy her aunt, and based on actual facts about Rebecca's life. How did he know where she worked?" After Patricia left to spread this new, more favorable gossip, Rebecca turned to Dominic with narrowed eyes. "The Renaissance collection? Really? You have a small callus on your right middle finger from writing extensive notes," he observed calmly. "Your posture when the quartet played Vivaldi suggested formal music education. You work with art or historical documents. The museum was a logical guess based on your sister's wedding program listing you as a curator. The level of observation was both impressive and unsettling. You just met me. How could you possibly notice all that?" "I notice everything," Dominic said simply. "It's how I stay alive." The casual mention of survival sent a chill through Rebecca. "What exactly do you want from me?" His expression became serious. "I have business to conduct here tonight. Having you as my companion provides useful cover. In exchange, I spare you from your family's pity and matchmaking attempts for the remainder of the evening. That's it? Just pretend to be your date." "Just pretend," he confirmed. "Unless you'd prefer to endure more conversations about your aunt's dentist neighbor." Rebecca considered her options. "Spend the rest of the night fielding sympathetic looks and awkward setup attempts. Or accept this strange alliance with a man who radiated both danger and protection in equal measure." "Fine," she decided, "but I want to know what kind of business requires armed security at a wedding." Dominic's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps later. For now, I believe we're expected on the dance floor." The band had shifted to slower music, and couples were filling the polished wooden floor. Dominic stood and offered his hand with a grace that suggested extensive practice. His hand was warm and slightly rough when she placed hers in it, surprising given his obvious wealth. These were hands that did more than sign business contracts. On the dance floor, he pulled her close with confident familiarity. One hand settled at the small of her back, the other holding hers with just enough pressure to guide her movements. He led with the kind of skill that spoke of formal training, moving them smoothly through the other dancers. "You dance well," Rebecca observed, trying to ignore how aware she was of every point of contact between their bodies. "My mother insisted on lessons," Dominic replied. "She believed certain skills were essential, regardless of one's chosen profession." "And what profession did you choose?" His hand tightened fractionally at her waist. "The family business. Which is complicated," he said, effectively ending that line of questioning. They moved in silence for a moment, and Rebecca became aware of eyes watching them. Not just her family, but others in the ballroom. Men in dark suits positioned at strategic points around the room, their attention focused on Dominic. A few of Bradley's groomsmen kept glancing their way with expressions that seemed nervous rather than curious. "People are staring at us," she murmured. "They're staring at you," Dominic corrected. "Wondering what makes you special enough to catch my attention." The possessive edge in his voice sent conflicting signals through her nervous system. Warning and warmth tangled together in a confusing mess. "I'm not special," Rebecca said quietly. "I'm just a museum curator who got stood up for her sister's wedding." Dominic's eyes met hers with unexpected intensity. "The man who stood you up was a fool. And before this night ends, everyone here will know that you belong to someone who values you properly." The statement should have offended her independent sensibilities. Instead, It sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. As the song ended, Dominic didn't immediately release her. His thumb traced a small circle against her back, a gesture so subtle that only she could feel it. "I need to speak with someone briefly," he said, his voice dropping lower. "Stay at our table. Don't wander." It wasn't a request. Before she could protest the commanding tone, he was moving away. One of his security team falling into step beside him as he approached Bradley's father near the bar. The warning signs. Rebecca returned to table 12, her mind racing. Something about Dominic Castellano felt dangerous, but not in a way that made her want to run. More like standing at the edge of a cliff, feeling the pull of the drop while knowing you should step back. She watched him speak with Bradley's father. The older man's jovial expression faded as Dominic talked, his face going pale. When Dominic placed a hand on his shoulder, the gesture looked friendly from a distance. Up close, Rebecca suspected it carried an entirely different message. "Your boyfriend is quite intense." Rebecca jumped slightly. Her younger cousin Tyler had appeared beside her chair, following her gaze across the ballroom. "He's not my boyfriend," she said automatically. "We're just dating casually." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "Does he know that? Because the way he looks at you suggests otherwise." He paused, his expression becoming serious. "Be careful, Rebecca. Dominic Castellano isn't someone you want to get tangled up with." "You know him?" "I know of him," Tyler corrected. "My firm handles some legal work for businesses in the city. His name comes up sometimes in conversations people don't want recorded." He glanced around nervously before adding, "Just be careful, okay? Men like that don't do casual anything." Before Rebecca could press for details, Tyler melted back into the crowd of guests. She sat alone, processing this new information. Men like that. The phrase echoed in her mind, confirming suspicions she had been trying to ignore. Dominic returned 20 minutes later, satisfaction evident in his relaxed posture. He reclaimed his seat beside her, his thigh pressing against hers beneath the tablecloth. "Everything settled?" she asked carefully. "For now," he replied, signaling for fresh champagne. His hand found hers on the table, his fingers interlacing with hers in a gesture that looked affectionate but felt possessive. "Thank you for waiting. Did I have a choice?" His smile was answer enough. The reception continued around them. Rebecca played her part, laughing at appropriate moments, engaging with relatives who stopped by their table, all while hyper-aware of Dominic's constant presence beside her. He was attentive without being overbearing, charming when necessary, but always maintaining that undercurrent of controlled danger as the evening wound down and guests began departing. Dominic leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "My car is outside. I'll take you home." It wasn't a suggestion. Rebecca's heart hammered against her ribs as she gathered her small clutch purse. This was the moment she could end this strange interlude. Thank him politely and call a rideshare service like a sensible person. Instead, she heard herself saying, "Okay." His hand found the small of her back as they moved through the thinning crowd toward the exit. Several of her relatives called out goodbyes, their expressions pleased that she had found someone so obviously successful and attentive. If only they knew what she was beginning to suspect about the man guiding her toward the waiting black sedan with tinted windows outside. The cool night air hit her overheated skin. Dominic's driver opened the rear door with practiced efficiency. Rebecca paused at the threshold, suddenly aware that stepping into that car meant crossing a line she might not be able to uncross. Dominic's hand pressed gently, but firmly at her back. "Trust me, Rebecca. You're safe with me." The problem was, she was beginning to suspect that safety and Dominic Castellano were not compatible concepts. But the pull was too strong, the curiosity too intense. She stepped into the car, Dominic sliding in beside her a moment later, as the door closed with a soft click and the vehicle pulled smoothly into the night. Rebecca realized her life had just changed in ways she could not yet comprehend. The empty chair at table 12 had been filled by a dangerous man who seemed to see her in ways no one else ever had, and despite every warning sign, despite the obvious danger, she wanted to know what came next. The revelation: the car moved through the city's streets with unnatural smoothness. as if the vehicle existed in a separate reality from the traffic around it. Rebecca sat rigid in the leather seat, acutely aware of Dominic's presence beside her. The partition between them and the driver was raised, creating an intimate cocoon of silence. "Your address?" Dominic asked, his voice breaking the tension. Rebecca hesitated, before giving him the street name of her apartment building in the Arts District. It was a modest neighborhood, safe enough but far from the luxury that clearly surrounded Dominic's world. He relayed the information to his driver through a discreet communication device, then turned his full attention to her. In the dim interior lighting, his features seemed sharper, more predatory. "You're wondering what you've gotten yourself into?" he observed. It wasn't a question. Among other things, Rebecca admitted, deciding honesty was safer than pretense with this man. "My cousin warned me about you," said. "You're not someone to get tangled up with. Your cousin is correct." Dominic's bluntness surprised her. "I'm not a good man, Rebecca. I do things that would horrify you. I make decisions that prioritize power over morality." "Then why are you telling me this?" His eyes locked onto hers with unsettling intensity. "Because I want you to understand what you're choosing if you continue seeing me. I won't lie to you about what I am." Rebecca's pulse quickened. "And what are you, exactly?" "My family controls significant portions of this city's commercial interests," Dominic said carefully. "Shipping, construction, waste management, entertainment venues. We maintain order in places where law enforcement either cannot or will not operate effectively." The careful wording couldn't disguise the truth. "You're part of organized crime." "That's the term law enforcement uses," he acknowledged without shame. "We prefer to think of ourselves as entrepreneurs who understand the real mechanisms of power." Rebecca should have demanded he stop the car immediately. Should have fled from this confession and never looked back. Instead, she found herself asking, "Why tell me? Why not just let me walk away thinking you were a legitimate businessman?" Dominic reached across the space between them, his hand cupping her cheek with surprising gentleness. "Because I've been watching you for months, Rebecca Hart. I know you value honesty above comfort. I know you'd rather face an ugly truth than live with a beautiful lie." The admission sent ice through her veins. "You've been watching me?" "For months. Since last spring," he confirmed, his thumb tracing her jawline. "I attended a fundraiser at your museum. You were giving a tour of the new medieval collection to a group of donors. You spoke about a 13th century manuscript with such passion that everyone in the room was captivated, including me." Rebecca remembered that event. It had been one of her proudest professional moments, successfully engaging wealthy patrons with academic material they normally found dry. "So you decided to stalk me?" "I decided to learn about you," Dominic corrected. "To understand what kind of woman could make me feel something other than calculation and strategy." His hand dropped from her face. "When I discovered your boyfriend had orchestrated your firing from the museum board through his family connections because you rejected his advances, I knew I had to intervene." Rebecca's blood went cold. "What?" "Trevor didn't get me fired. Budget cuts eliminated my position." "Budget cuts that Trevor's uncle, who sits on the museum's board of directors, specifically suggested," Dominic said, his voice hardening. "After you refused to accompany him to a conference in Miami last month, he made it clear your position was contingent on your personal availability." Memory flashed. Trevor's angry expression when she declined the trip, citing work commitments. His cold silence for days afterward. The sudden announcement of restructuring that eliminated her curatorial position while creating a new one immediately filled by someone with far less experience. "How do you know this?" "I know everything that happens in this city," Dominic replied simply. "Especially when it involves someone who interests me." The car slowed, pulling up to her apartment building. Through the tinted window, Rebecca could see the familiar brick facade, the struggling plants in window boxes, the security door with its temperamental lock. Her world suddenly looked smaller, more vulnerable. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Dominic studied her for a long moment. "That depends on what you want, Rebecca. You can walk away tonight. I'll ensure Trevor faces consequences for his actions. Your position at the museum will be restored with a promotion, and we never see each other again. And if I don't walk away," his expression intensified, "then you accept that you belong to me now, Under my protection? Yes, but also under my rules. You'll move into my home where I can ensure your safety. You'll allow my security to monitor your movements. And you'll give me your loyalty in exchange for everything I can provide. The directness should have terrified her. Instead, Rebecca felt a strange pull toward this dangerous proposition. Life had been so careful, so controlled, so endlessly predictable. Dominic represented chaos and danger, but also passion and intensity she had never experienced. I need time to think, she said finally. You have until I walk you to your door, Dominic replied. Some decisions don't improve with deliberation. The choice he exited the car first, offering his hand to help her out. The simple courtesy felt absurd given the weight of the choice he was demanding. His security team had already positioned themselves around the building entrance, their vigilance making her modest apartment complex look like a high-security facility. They walked to her building in silence. Rebecca's mind raced through possibilities and consequences. Everything logical screamed to run from this man in his dangerous world. But logic had given her a safe, predictable existence that had crumbled the moment someone with real power decided she was inconvenient at her door. Dominic turned her to face him, his hands settling on her waist with possessive certainty. Choose, Rebecca, he said softly. Safety and mediocrity, or danger and everything you've ever wanted but been too cautious to reach for. She looked up at him, seeing the predator beneath the polish. But she also saw something else. Loneliness. Need. A hunger for genuine connection in a world of transactions and betrayals. If I say yes, she began carefully, I need certain things. I won't be a prisoner. I won't abandon my career. And I won't be treated like property. You'll be mine, Dominic stated firmly. But never just property. What I want from you can't be taken by force, Rebecca. It has to be given freely. Distinction mattered more than she wanted to admit. Ish, she whispered, the single word sealing her fate. Dominic's eyes flared with triumph and something that looked like relief. He pulled her closer, his lips capturing hers in a kiss that was both claiming and questioning. Rebecca responded with an intensity that surprised them both, her hands fisting in his expensive shirt as she pressed against him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. Pack what you need for tonight, he instructed. My people will collect the rest of your belongings tomorrow and put them in storage. You won't be coming back here. The finality of it struck her. This wasn't a trial period or casual arrangement. By accepting his offer, she had fundamentally altered the trajectory of her life. Inside her apartment, Rebecca moved through familiar rooms that suddenly felt like they belonged to a stranger. She packed a small bag with essentials, her hands trembling slightly as she selected items for this new life. Jade barely understood. Dominic waited in her small living room, his presence making the modest space feel cramped. She noticed how his eyes cataloged everything, the worn furniture, the secondhand bookshelf overflowing with art history texts, the single photograph of her parents on the mantel. They died when I was 22, Rebecca said, following his gaze to the photo. Car accident? On their anniversary trip? I know, Dominic replied gently. I'm sorry for your loss. The reminder that he knew her history, had researched her life in detail, should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like being truly seen for the first time in years. The new world, the drive to Dominic's home, took them to the opposite end of the city, where old money and new power converged in a neighborhood of historic mansions and modern luxury towers. His building was the tallest, a sleek structure of glass and steel that dominated the skyline. Private elevator required a key card and biometric scan to access. As it ascended smoothly toward the top floor, Rebecca's nervousness increased. She was really doing this. Moving in with a man she had met hours ago, a man who had openly admitted to being a criminal. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse that took her breath away. Floor 2 ceiling windows showcased a panoramic view of the city lights stretching to the horizon. The interior balanced masculine elegance with unexpected warmth, leather furniture, rich wood accents, artwork that included several pieces she recognized from prestigious galleries. Welcome home, Dominic said. Watching her reaction carefully, a woman appeared from a hallway to their left. She was in her late 50s, elegant in a simple black dress, with sharp eyes that assessed Rebecca thoroughly. "This is Carmen," Dominic introduced. "My aunt, and the person who actually runs my household. Carmen, this is Rebecca Hart. She'll be living here now." Carmen's expression remained neutral. "Miss Hart, your room is prepared." "I'll show you." "She'll stay in my room," Dominic corrected. His hand settling possessively at Rebecca's waist, something flickered across Carmen's face. Surprise quickly masked by professional composure. "As you wish." "Shall I prepare dinner?" "We ate at the reception," Dominic replied. "But coffee would be welcome." After Carmen departed, Rebecca turned to face him. "Your room? You didn't mention that part of the arrangement. Would it have changed your answer?" She considered the question honestly. "I don't know." "Then it's better to establish expectations clearly now," Dominic said, pulling her closer. "I want you in my bed, Rebecca. In my space, where I can reach for you in the night and know you're real." The raw need in his voice sent heat through her. "This is moving very fast." "We can move at whatever pace you need," he conceded, though his grip didn't loosen. "But you'll still sleep in my room. I need to know you're safe, that you haven't disappeared or changed your mind." Rebecca understood then that beneath his control and power, Dominic carried wounds of his own, losses that made him need physical proof of her presence. "Show me your room," she said quietly, making her choice. The intimacy Dominic's bedroom was a study in controlled luxury. Dominated by a massive bed with dark gray linens, the space also included a sitting area, a desk with multiple computer monitors, and a wall of windows with automated privacy shades. One entire wall was dedicated to a bookshelf filled with titles ranging from classical philosophy to modern business strategy. "You read?" Rebecca observed, surprised by the eclectic collection. "Knowledge is power," Dominic replied, coming to stand behind her. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "My father taught me that before he was killed. Everything else can be taken, but what you know, what you understand, remains yours." She leaned into his warmth, feeling the solid strength of him. "How did he die?" "Betrayal by someone he trusted," Dominic said, his voice hardening. "I was 19. After his death, I had to prove myself capable of leading our family interests, or watch everything he built be destroyed by rivals." "How did you prove yourself?" His arms tightened around her. "By being more ruthless than anyone expected. By making examples that ensured no one would question my authority again." He pressed his lips to her temple. "I'm not a good man, Rebecca. I need you to remember that." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "If you weren't good in some way, you wouldn't keep warning me." "Or I'm just ensuring you can't claim ignorance later," he countered. But his hands were gentle as they framed her face. Their second kiss was slower than the first, exploratory rather than claiming. Dominic's control was evident in every measured movement, every careful touch, but Rebecca could feel the restraint it required, the desire he was carefully banking. When his hands moved to the zipper of her dress, she stilled. "Too fast?" he asked immediately, reading her hesitation. "I just want to understand what this is," Rebecca said. "Are you looking for a mistress? A trophy? What exactly am I to you?" Dominic's expression became serious. "You're the first person in 10 years who made me want something beyond power and revenge. You're the first woman I've brought to this home since I bought it. You're not my mistress, Rebecca. You're mine in a way that goes far deeper than any temporary arrangement." The possessive declaration should have set off alarm bells. Instead, it resonated with something deep inside her that had always wanted to be chosen. Truly chosen by someone who saw all of her. "Then show me," she whispered. The morning after dawn light filtered through the partially opened shades, casting golden patterns across the tangled sheets. Rebecca woke slowly, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings and the warm body beside her. Dominic slept with one arm draped across her waist, his face relaxed in a way she suspected was rare. In sleep, the dangerous edge that defined him softened, revealing younger features marked by old scars and burdens. She studied him in the quiet morning light, processing the enormity of what she had done, In less than 24 hours, she had accepted a stranger's protection, moved into his home, and shared his bed. Every rational part of her mind screamed that this was insane, reckless, dangerous. But she couldn't summon regret. Dominic's eyes opened suddenly, instantly alert. When he registered her presence, his expression softened into something that looked like wonder. "You're still here," he murmured, pulling her closer. "Where else would I be?" "Running," he admitted. "Most people run when they truly see what I am."
Oh, Rebecca.
Traced the scar along his collarbone. "What happened here?" "Knife fight when I was 23, he replied. A rival thought killing me would create a power vacuum he could exploit. Clearly he was wrong. Dominic's smile was sharp. Very wrong. I made sure his mistake was his last. The casual mention of violence should have horrified her. Instead, Rebecca found herself accepting it as part of the complex man she had chosen. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Carmen's voice came through. "Sir, James Rivera is here. He says it's urgent." Dominic's expression shifted instantly from lover to leader. "Give me 5 minutes." He rose from the bed unselfconsciously, his body a map of scars and controlled power. Rebecca watched as he dressed efficiently in dark pants and a shirt, the transformation from vulnerable to dangerous complete. "Stay in the bedroom," he instructed, his voice carrying unmistakable command. "James handles my security. His visit means there's a situation that requires my attention." After he left, Rebecca remained in bed, listening to muffled voices from the other room. She caught fragments. The Moretti family. Message sent. Retaliation likely. The reality of Dominic's world crashed over her again. This wasn't a romance novel or a movie. This was real danger, real violence, real consequences. When Dominic returned 20 minutes later, his expression was closed and hard. "There's a situation I need to handle," he said. "You'll stay here today. Carmen will get you anything you need. Don't leave the penthouse." "For how long?" "Until I return." He moved to the bedside, his hand cupping her cheek. "I need to know you're safe, Rebecca. Can you do this for me?" She nodded, recognizing this wasn't negotiable. He kissed her once, hard and possessive, before leaving. The sound of the elevator descending felt like a door closing. Separating her from normal life permanently, the isolation 3 days passed with no word from Dominic beyond brief text messages. Confirming he was alive and handling business, Rebecca existed in the luxurious penthouse like a bird in a gilded cage, her every need attended to by Carmen's efficient staff, but unable to leave or make contact with her former life. Carmen proved to be an unexpected companion. The older woman's initial coolness thawed slightly as she observed Rebecca's genuine concern for Dominic rather than interest in his wealth. "He's never brought anyone here before," Carmen said on the second evening, joining Rebecca for dinner on the terrace. "In the 15 years I've managed his household, you're the first. Why not?" Rebecca asked, grateful for conversation after days of isolation. "Because trust is a luxury men in his position cannot afford," Carmen replied, her eyes sharp despite her casual tone. "His father's death taught him that lesson brutally. Since then, he's kept everyone at a calculated distance. Except me. Except you," Carmen agreed. "Which is why I need to understand your intentions. Are you here for his money? His power? Or something else?" Rebecca met the older woman's gaze steadily. "I'm here because he sees me. Really sees me. Not what I can provide or what role I can play, but who I actually am." Something like approval flickered across Carmen's face. "Good answer. But be warned, Miss Hart. Loving a man like Dominic comes with a price. His enemies will see you as leverage. His business will sometimes require him to make choices that hurt you, and his world will demand compromises you may not want to make." "You sound like you're speaking from experience." Carmen's expression became distant. "I was married to Dominic's uncle. Antonio was a good man, but this life consumed him. Eventually, it consumed our marriage too. I stayed with the family after we separated because they were all I had left." She leaned forward. "I'm telling you this so you understand what you've chosen. This isn't a fairy tale, Miss Hart. It's a war, and you've just volunteered for the front lines." Before Rebecca could respond, her phone buzzed with a message from Dominic. "Coming home tonight." Be ready. The return Rebecca spent hours preparing, unsure what be ready meant, but wanting to look her best. She wore a simple dress from the wardrobe that had mysteriously appeared in Dominic's closet. Filled with clothes in her exact size and style, when the elevator finally opened near midnight, Dominic stepped out looking like he had aged years in 3 days. His suit was rumpled, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and fresh bruises marked his knuckles. Rebecca, he breathed her name like a prayer, crossing the space between them in 3 strides. His arms wrapped around her with desperate intensity, his face buried in her hair. God, I needed this. Needed you. She held him tightly, feeling the tension radiating through his body. What happened? Business, he said tersely. Nothing you need to know about. You're hurt. It's nothing. He pulled back, his hands framing her face. Tell me you haven't changed your mind. Tell me you're still here willingly. The vulnerability in his voice broke her heart. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. His kiss was fierce and claiming, tasting of whiskey and desperation. When he lifted her, carrying her toward the bedroom, Rebecca went willingly, understanding that he needed physical proof of her presence, her choice, her acceptance. Their lovemaking that night was different from their first time. Raw and intense, driven by Dominic's need to lose himself in sensation rather than thought. Afterward, he held her with bruising tightness, as if she might disappear if he loosened his grip. 3 people died because of decisions I made this week, he said into the darkness. I ordered actions that destroyed families. Becca's breath caught, but she didn't pull away. Do you regret it? No, he admitted. That's what makes me a monster. I did what was necessary to protect my family's interests, and I'd do it again. He turned to look at her. Does that frighten you? She considered the question honestly. Yes, but I'm still here. Why? The question carried genuine confusion. Why stay with a man who just admitted to being responsible for deaths? Because I don't believe you're only that, Rebecca said carefully. You're also the man who researched my favorite authors to stock your library, who ensures Carmen has the best medical care, even though she's technically just an employee, who warned me repeatedly about what you are because you wanted me to have a choice. Dominic's expression cracked, revealing pain beneath the control. I don't deserve you. It's probably not, she agreed with slight smile. But you have me anyway. The peaceful moment shattered the next morning when James Rivera arrived during breakfast, his expression grim. We have a problem, he announced without preamble. The Moretti family has identified Miss Hart as your weakness. There's been chatter about using her to pressure you into giving up the port contracts. Dominic's entire demeanor changed, becoming cold and lethal. Threats or actions? Just threats so far, James replied. But they're serious. Tommy Moretti was overheard saying they should grab her before you get too attached. Rebecca's blood ran cold. The abstract danger of Dominic's world had suddenly become concrete and terrifying. Increase her security detail, Dominic ordered. She doesn't go anywhere without at least 3 guards. And get me a meeting with Victor Moretti. We're going to resolve this now, no, Rebecca said firmly, surprising both men. You're not going to meet with them because of me? I won't be the reason for more violence. Dominic turned to her, his expression fierce. You don't understand what you're asking. If I show weakness, if I fail to protect what's mine, every enemy I have will see an opening. Then teach me how to protect myself, she countered. Give me the tools to survive in your world instead of treating me like fragile decoration. Something shifted in Dominic's eyes. Respect mixed with concern. If I do that, there's no going back. You'll be fully part of this life. I'm already fully part of it, Rebecca pointed out. The Moretti family didn't make that decision for me. I did when I chose to stay. James cleared his throat. Sir, she has a point. A partner who can defend herself is less of a liability than one who needs constant protection. Dominic studied Rebecca for a long moment before nodding slowly. Fine, James. Start her training today. Self-defense, situational awareness, weapons, if she's willing. But he moved closer, his voice dropping to dangerous levels. That doesn't mean I'm letting the Moretti threat stand. They touched something of mine. That requires a response. The training the next weeks fell into a strange rhythm. Mornings were spent with James learning self-defense, how to assess threats, how to move through crowds safely. Afternoons, Rebecca returned to work at the museum, now with a security detail that made her colleagues whisper behind carefully blank expressions. Evenings belonged to Dominic when he was home. He had become more possessive since the Moretti threat emerged, needing physical contact. Confirmation that she was safe and still his. "You're improving," James commented during a training session where Rebecca had successfully broken free from a hold and created distance. "Another few months, and you'll be genuinely dangerous." "I don't want to be dangerous," Rebecca said, breathing hard from exertion. "I just want to survive in his world." James's expression became serious. In his world, those are the same thing. That night, Dominic surprised her with dinner on the terrace, candles flickering in the evening breeze. The city spread out below them like jewels on velvet. "What's the occasion?" Rebecca asked, accepting the wine he offered. "Does there need to be one?" he countered, but something in his expression suggested otherwise. They ate in comfortable silence, the easiness between them a testament to how quickly they had adapted to each other. But as dessert was served, Dominic's demeanor shifted to something more serious. "The situation with the Moretti family is resolved," he announced. "Victor and I came to an understanding. You're off limits. They've agreed to spread the word through all the families." Relief flooded through her. "How did you convince them?"